some features, but this is also linked to part of the instructional design that I encourage people to be thinking about, and that is what I refer to as the path model, pre, at, and post. So we've done a little bit of a pre, at, and post design for this keynote speaking event right now because you're in the at stage, but beforehand, some of you went to my website, you read some of the things, you maybe looked at the slides, put a few comments in, so you were engaged with the event before you even got here. So hopefully that kind of set you up. And now we're doing a little bit of an interactivity, and then at the end, I'll have a quick action for you to finish off with. So once you've kind of decided on your PAP model, then you need to kind of decide for your webinar what kind of interaction design is it going to be. Because in this case, for this webinar, what I've got is it's set up as a 1, 2, many ones. So you are all individually logged in. We could also do it in a, if the other room was, if people were in the other room. No, I don't see anyone? No? Okay. So if they were in the other room, it could be 1, 2, a group. And if that was the case, then we would need to look at the third category there about hosts and facilitators. If you're doing a webinar where you've got a remote presenter, but a group of people together, then you're going to want to have a facilitator to act as that mediator between the group and the presenter. So there are a number of different instructional designs that we want to consider when we're doing our interactive webinars. And the last category is recordings. So those of you that were paying attention to the very beginning, I said, you're giving permission by participating to have this recorded. Where is it being recorded? On the server from the screen. So whatever is being captured on the screen is being recorded. But we could have just as easily asked the host to get a camera set up, right? And have that event recorded that way. And you all have your smartphones out, right? Why don't you have your smartphone out recording the keynote, right? So this is another perspective, another way of engaging with this. If I gave you each individually access to become active participants in this, so when you log in, you're now a passive audience, but I could change your status to allow you to put your video up. We would see your video up on the screen, but there's too many of you, so that's why I'm not doing it. But that way, we're getting your perspective, we're getting your image. But just as well, we could have that mobile phone act as another eye, another perspective. So you could have that video, not on yourself, but on the people around you. So from my point of view, as a remote host, I'm seeing not just you, but I'm seeing the context of where you are in relationship to your participation. So this is something that we want to be thinking about. The traditional webinar is very two-dimensional, very flat. But in next generation design, we're going to be trying to think about how can we make this more immersive? How can we do that right now in this room? Well, that can be changed. Unfortunately, physically in this room, it's going to be difficult because the chairs are fixed. But if we were next door, I would have said, instead of having this transmission model design of the room, I would have said, let's make a circle. How many of you, show of hands, have heard of the fishbowl design before? A couple people? What, okay, have you used it? Have you tried it? No? You have? Like what was the context? What was the situation? Oh, should we do this? Okay, so you had teams of, and how was the seating? So they were sitting like in a circle in their team? Okay, okay. Yeah. Oh, okay, interesting. All right. So they would give feedback to the people in the center. All right, interesting. So this is based off of the Socratic discussion design, where it's aimed at shifting that role. Instead of me transmitting to you, and some of you are falling asleep back there. So if you see the person next to you sleeping, give them a nudge, please. All right. This is transmission model. But if we were in a circle, you wouldn't be able to fall asleep so easily because other people can see you a little bit better, right? So you go, oh, wait a minute, I better stay awake, they can see me, right? But in this fishbowl design, you've got the experts in the center with the audience around, and just as you described, when there is a question or a comment, we would change roles. So again, that's changing that perspective. Instead of being me, the outside, and you being the inside, now we're immersed in the discussion. So this fishbowl design is something I would encourage you to go back to your organizations, try this out. It's part of an unconference design, they call it, and it's very powerful. But the question is, how can that be changed into a virtual design? And what is it? 1/2 I'm done?
Yeah, but we have 5 minutes more before we start.
Oh, okay. So I'm putting forward what I'm referring to as the immersive 360 fishbowl webinar. Now, you can see here there are several rings with different stakeholders. Over on the bottom left, you've got the screen. So that would be like this screen here with the webinar going on. And we've got a number of different technologies that we're using. For example, in the center ring, we've got in the middle the expert people, but then we also have a 360 video camera. Have any of you experimented with 360 video before? Okay, yeah, a couple people, all right. Good experience or not so good, or it's working for you. Okay, so on my YouTube link that's up here, it should be in the text chat somewhere, but it's also on the website. I made a quick icebreaker where we would be introducing the people. I don't know if we'll have time to show it on here, but have a play with it, because we've got 3 of us debating the value of a learning management system. And so we're introducing ourselves. You can click on it. You can see myself as the lead speaker, but then when we hand over to the other person in the circle, you can click and drag the image to see that person. So it's using that 360 video and the fishbowl design. Some other elements of it as well. We would be linking the audio so that we could do text transcripts as well as tag clouds. And the stakeholders would be the participants, but then also someone acting as a facilitator. So we've got someone who is actually kind of guiding the discussion. And 3 minutes. And each person would have their own mobile phone to be able to add to it. So we go out to the next ring, which is the audience, the face-to-face audience, and the camera, which would be acting as the main video. And then the virtual audience is participating as well. So this is a model that I'm doing research and development on. If you're interested in finding out a little bit more about it, it's on my website. And I'm happy to chat with people during the conference about that in more detail. Also, I've got a resource for you to download. It's what I refer to as a flat pack webinar toolkit. So if you are interested in actually creating your own interactive webinar, take that, download it, and it has a number of different checklists for the pre, at, and post activities for your webinar design. And please contact me, let me know how it works, and if it's useful, and if you are interested in collaborating on using that some more. Here's your homework. All right, this is the challenge now. Okay, this is the post part. He's laughing, but I'm going to check that you do it now. All right. What I want you all to do is something called 1-minute essays. Anyone heard of 1-minute essays? Show of hands. What you have? Oh, good. All right. It's fantastic, isn't it? 1 minute you've got to write down what you've learned. Okay, now you don't have to do it right now. You could do it right now if you wanted to, but 1 minute, I want you reflect and think. From this keynote, what were the takeaways? What was something that you learned? You have to force yourself to stop at 1 minute. All right? And it's a brilliant icebreaker in the class. I always use that like, okay, so from the last class to now, and it doesn't have to be what you've learned in the class. It can be from your colleagues, it can be out in the news, anything. 1 minute, write it down. So your challenge is email that to me so that I can post that up on the discussion board. But you have to be honest, only 1 minute. All right, and you can't go back and edit it and all that. You've got to just kind of force yourself to think clearly. What are the clear takeaways? All right? And I think we have a commercial. Yep. And if you enjoyed this talk, the host organization is putting a book out called the University of the Future, and my book chapter is in there, which goes into a lot more detail and about the keynote. So thank you all very much. I hope that you enjoyed this. Thank you.